everybody, it's podcast time. We're almost agreement. We're going to do a podcast. We got a special guest again. We had a special guest a couple weeks ago with the Matt Shears, calling all the way in from Virginia or North Carolina. I'm not sure where he actually was at the time, but we talked Jimmy Carter back then. But that's old news. We're going on the new stuff. Special session starts Monday, and it's going to be interesting. Almost an agreement. Almost agreement at gmail.com, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Go to the website, almostagreement.com. There will soon be a link for Hollaroo 25, May 17th, Street Fair, Soapbox Derby, Rock and Roll Show. Sign up to participate in any way you want to, and come out if you're just going to come out and see a fun, good time. So we're almost in agreement, and we're going to start a show here in just a second. Sam Lano, what's going on, friend?
Oh, not much. How are you?
I'm doing well. What's new with you? What's going on?
Oh, not a whole lot.
All right, we got that important part of the show out of the way. And as mentioned in the intro, the one and only Jennifer Owens is here. What are you doing nowadays?
Hanging out, watching birds.
Hanging out and watching birds. So many. I don't know. There's jokes there. Anyway, the one and only Jennifer Owens, a former Knox County school teacher, correct?
Yes.
And former member of the Knox County School Board before all this partisan bullshit came into play. She got out of there. She wasn't down with that. But anyway, one of my favorite people to argue school stuff with, and most specifically vouchers, which, as mentioned in the intro, we have a special session, which, I'm sorry, Governor Lee, I apologize. I called it vouchers. The Student Special Scholarship Program or whatever it is.
It's vouchers.
Vouchers, whatever. We get the point. Is the big kind of keynote of this one. I agree right off the bat that the idea of shoving this into a special session seems kind of like bullshit. But outside of that, we all knew it was coming this year. So I guess my first kind of talking point on it is, what's the point of squeezing it into a special session? Like, I understand, like any of this actually, but specifically this one of the special session.
The point of squeezing it in the special session is to squeeze votes out of legislators who don't want it. So those legislators in distressed counties, those legislators in hurricane hurt counties, those legislators, he wants their votes on this bill. He needs their votes. So if he can hold that other funding over their heads and get their votes.
So I don't understand that part's so confusing because it's 6 separate bills.
It is.
That are in play, and they're uniquely separate. There is nothing in number 1. Well, they are kind of weird because like Senate Bill 1 is House Bill 2 or something. Like they don't line up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But at least for House Bill 1, there's nothing in House Bill 1 that makes any reference to immigration or anything about funding for hurricane relief or whatever the other one that's kind of in play that I don't remember. Well, it's really all 6 of these are about those 3 things, but none of them overlap.
Right.
So help me understand the strategy part of how he is holding hurricane relief overheads to force these distressed and whatnot to get.
So how exactly we don't know right now, because I don't know what's going on behind closed doors. I can guess because I know what's gone on in the past, but
I mean, you're on my show, so absolutely, there's no need for provable statements. We're just asking for your best efforts.
Yes,
and assuming that you have a deeper understanding than we do.
And I'll give it.
I don't know. Is this subject like important to you or something?
I've got nothing to hold back anymore. So, what tends to happen is he goes to legislators, they tell him they're against a bill or whatever, and he starts pressuring with different things or wheeling and dealing with different things. Sometimes it's down to, hey, are you with us or against us? If you're not with us, we're going to primary you in the next election. Sometimes it's, hey, buddy, what do you need in your county? Where can we make a trade? If I can,
let's just be fair, though. That's just politics.
It's normal, yeah.
Okay.
It's normal politics, but a special session is supposed to be for an emergency, right?
Right.
Hurricane relief is an emergency, But is it an emergency in January when the actual session is already starting? It was an emergency months ago when they really needed it. That's when this special session should have happened.
Right.
So,
well, I don't know. Okay, just this is a super dork in the weeds question.
Yeah.
We had a whole I don't know what percentage of the House turned over this year in this last election cycle. How
Not
many?
A lot.
Because I was just thinking like that. I could see the argument at least to not call a special session when you have a bunch of new members of the body that aren't acclimated to what's going on yet.
Right, but they're still not. I mean, they're still just starting.
Right, but I'm saying had it been back in was when swear in for a state house rep.
I think it's beginning of January.
So then, technically,
they were just
last sessions people. If you'd called it back in November, it would have been last sessions people even after the election because swear in it was before swear in.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
think
saying like officially be members yet until they're sworn in.
What? So the old person is still a member until the new person's sworn in.
Yeah. Like locally, let's take school board for example. My race was done the beginning of August, but I was still in until the beginning of September.
Right.
So, I mean, that's a shorter time period than the legislature, but you've still got that kind of overlap until the other person is sworn in.
Yeah. Okay.
So
okay.
The official.
Right. So
if they
I'm
they
trying
could
to think
have had
of an example. None of the local ones changed, right?
No, they could have done it in November. They could have done it in December.
Right. But I'm just thinking out loud. It's just like, so Massey, who wasn't on the cycle anyway, had she been in the first term, whatever.
And they didn't. They couldn't have done it in September, October, because then all those legislators would have had to stop fundraising and campaigning.
Oh, I know, and that's why
they can't stop fundraising and campaigning for 3 days to take care of hurricanes.
Well, that's my theory of the case on why this didn't get passed last year, because they wanted to get out of session and get to campaigning, and none of them wanted to have this hanging on their campaign as an immediate near thought. Because right now, today. This week, because they started session technically this past week, is the furthest away from an election all of them are going to be.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it look good on an incumbent to do something like that?
It depends on your constituency.
Yeah, I guess.
Especially on a super controversial issue, to just kind of, we didn't touch it. Get me out of there.
Yeah.
Get me out of here, and
Controversial
we'll deal with that later.
Natural disaster relief.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm still on vouchers.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry. Yeah, sorry. That's why, because the hurricane didn't happen yet when session was still going on last time.
Right, sorry, yeah.
So the reason that the voucher thing didn't pass last time, to me, is because nobody wanted that.
Well, I thought they did
immediately going into campaigning.
The end of May of last year.
Yeah,
that was when
which is the very end of session last year.
Right.
It was like the last 2 weeks. It was just like, hey, by the way, let's do this big thing that everybody's been flipping out about for 2 years.
They've been working on vouchers for forever. I've been following it since 2009, and it's a long-term goal. It's going to keep coming back forever. I hear lots of people who are like, we've been fighting this for 2 years. I'm like, no, we haven't. It's been a whole lot longer than
you
that.
might have been.
Yeah. But it's going to keep coming back because that's what privatizers want. It's what big money is being poured into. Americans for Prosperity, since I'm not on the board anymore, I'm jobless. So as I'm going through the job ads, I'm looking, and Americans for Prosperity is literally advertising for people to go door knocking in rural areas to talk to them about how great vouchers would be for them.
You should do it. You couldn't be any worse than Elon Musk door knockers. Those guys are just checking boxes on the iPad and going home.
Yeah. But so then they're getting those folks to call their legislators and convince them that there's a desire in that area when it's, paid people going out and trying to drum up business basically in an area where maybe they don't even have a private school.
Right. I mean, yeah, that would be the way to, it makes sense. That would be the logical, it's the path.
Yeah. And there are a couple different ways rural counties are looking at it. One is, why would we vote for this? We don't even have a private school. Another way is, well, it's not going to hurt us, so why don't we vote for it? It's only going to hurt.
Because we're going to go way deeper into that one, because I think that's the number one thing that I read through it, and as far as I could tell, at least on paper and what we're looking at today, there should be, if anything, it's other than the buyout for the teachers. That's the whole other set of bullshit. But at least on paper, it should. The more kids that go out of Knox County schools, the better it is for Knox County schools. We'll get into that. I'm sorry. I'm jumping ahead. We'll get there. I'll explain later. I'm sorry.
Yes and no. Because anytime you have a bill that has a hold harmless clause, it's because there's harm. And that harmless clause always runs out at some point.
Okay, so that's where we were getting to. Okay,
and
so
when
we jumped ahead.
Yeah, so we can.
I don't know.
I'll hold on that.
I'm not exactly sure how we want to break this down because we all have it here in front of us on the screens. You have a hard copy because you're old school like that, or didn't realize that I was going to have it on TV in front of your face, or both.
Or I'm old and can't see.
I'm getting to the point where like the brightness, like even when I have the night mode on, it's starting to hurt my eyeballs. I need to get some blue light coating or whatever for my glasses. All right, fine. We're all old. Thank you. Okay, so I don't know. Like, do we want to read it and we can start picking points apart as we come across them, or I don't know how to So I think we have a general understanding of the special session part. I think I get the premise of that all. To be 100% factually accurate, there are 6 separate bills in play. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 0 could actually pass. It could be any combination of them.
I think we won't know how. Well, we'll never know really what's happening. But if I were betting, I would bet that they will try to complete the voucher bill early and have the other ones follow. Because if somebody doesn't do what they want them to on the voucher bill, then maybe something's going to get reduced in their counties in one of the other bills.
And or the longer this thing takes, the longer it is to get back to normal session, the longer it is to get back to normal session, the longer normal session is going to end up taking, which means the longer you actually have to do your job and be in Nashville if you're not one of the locals in Nashville.
They're talking like it's going to take 3 days. And I think that's their goal, because the faster they can ram stuff through, the less time the public has to react to it. This bill, we know this just came out the 22nd. So people who are going through here looking at it from a legal standpoint, by the time they get through all the legal technicalities of it, it's going to be over and done.
Right. Well, it's like an anti shout out to our girl Gloria. She tried to tell me how easy the state website is to maneuver. False.
It's not.
I went in trying to find this, and I gave up and got lazy, and I emailed Becky Massey's office, her assistant. It's one of my favorites I've ever dealt with in any of the back and forth and all the different things I've done here. She emails me back a couple hours later with a link back to the state website, and then I got smart and actually Googled whatever the stupid actual bill's name is, here as to be known as the Education Freedom Scholarship Act, and when I found that, in a different portion of the state website is the actual printed
full
thing.
text.
Yeah. There's no direct link from the legislature website that's supposed to be the easy navigatable one that tells you the timing and where things are and all that stuff. There was no direct link to this from there, at least as of yesterday when I was doing it.
Yeah. Legislature website's notorious for giving you a very vague,
right.
4-sentence paragraph
You have to use that website a lot. If you use the website a lot, it's easy to navigate.
Right.
I mean, like if I'm going to tell you how to go find something, it's going to take me more time to try to explain it to you.
Right. It's like, give me directions to whatever in downtown Knoxville. I could probably chase it down because I know the road names in the general area and stuff. Do the same thing while I'm in Nashville. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
You're going to sell me some landmark that doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
That's how I equate the website.
And it's not user friendly. It's not intuitive at all. You can't tell that you need to click on that bill number up in the left corner to get to the text of the bill.
See, I didn't know that.
There's
I've been messing around
nothing
with it
that
forever.
tells you that
See,
at all.
All right, it's a
I've
win.
even clicked on full text, and it's still, I get 2 paragraphs of it.
Right, but that's just the summary that's in the left-hand column.
Right.
Yeah.
I didn't know that you could actually click on the bill number. See?
Yeah. So up in the left-hand column, you've got
We just got a special episode on how to work the state website.
Yeah, we could do that. That one I can actually do because I've taught it twice.
Look, I could go. You want to get into some of the real deep weeds? I can get you through 10-tap on paying your taxes through the state and all that other stuff. I get you on that one. Getting permits and licensures through the state or the locals. I got all those in my pocket.
So up in the left corner, it says the bill number, like SB001. And so if you click just directly on that, It takes
goes to
you
the full text
straight to the PDF.
So, quick question: is that pre or post amendments?
It'll
be the
pre-amendment.
original?
It's the original, and it will always be the original.
So it'll always be the original, and then you can go on and click amendments,
And
and then you can see what the amendments do to
Right.
the original text.
And there's this little tabbed section down through there, and it has all the amendments. But telling which amendment is actually on when it passes through is difficult, because you have to go through the bill history, and you have to go through both what the House did and what the Senate did to figure out which amendments are still on and which amendments are off, and you have to do that in backwards order.
Right. It's almost like the intent is to make it complicated for us lay people, because you're not a lay person, you don't count. For us lay people to get in there and understand what's going on.
Yeah.
It's almost like it might have been on purpose.
Right. And sometimes, I mean, I've been reading those and interpreting them for other people for a long time, but sometimes I have to go text a lobbyist and say, am I right? Is this this the one that's really on?
Well, it's like, I mean, the perfect example is like we were at, like, you know, personally to me, speaking of, I've got a whole bunch of gummies and stuff over here if you want one. We're going to get Jennifer real high tonight. Anyway.
No, we're not. I have real gummy worms from Ollie's out in the car.
It's kind of sad how long the Twizzlers you brought me last time you were here lasted. Usually they would be gone real fast. But for the sake of the listeners, we weren't eating on air. But the big hemp one that was going through last year, like I was trying to follow closely. And I mean, we went through it a dozen times on the show and tried to figure it out, tried to follow it. No idea what was going on.
Yeah. And
no idea what it actually meant. And then ag comes in and changes everything, and that's a whole other set of stuff. But it's like, it's very frustrating because you want to know, and if you want to know, if you want to try.
One of the tricky things is when you get down to the very bottom of the education bills, a lot of them say that rulemaking will take place with the Department of Ed. When it says that, basically that's saying that the Commissioner of Education can make the rules.
Right. That's what happened to my hemp bill with the Department of Ag.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it completely changed it, right?
Right.
That's the same thing that happened with the library books when it was talking about classroom libraries. Mm-hmm. And the bill that was passed had to do with putting all of the library materials on the website so parents could see it. Right. But when it got to rulemaking, the Commissioner of Education changed it to be anything in the school that could be considered a reading material, basically.
Right. Any
kinds of newspapers, pamphlets. I mean, it was, and we were trying to decide, is it the little free libraries, if they're actually on the grounds? And we were, what do we do then? And the legislators did not intend any of that. They didn't intend that to be, like books in a classroom. They intended it to be actual, here's the library materials.
See, I think
post them on the website.
I haven't gotten affirmation of my theory of the case, but my theory is that this is the hemp side was exactly what the legislators wanted. They just didn't want to put it in the front end of the bill writing wise because they didn't want the backlash for it.
Yeah, sometimes that happens.
That's
too.
My take is that they did it and
like, oh, we didn't mean that. That's the Department of Agriculture.
Briggs and TBI and whomever go over to Department of Ag and be like, this is what we're asking for.
Yeah,
but it doesn't say that. But this is what we're asking for, which is why we've had a bunch of lawsuits that are now kicked back, and we're waiting on the actual session to start for a new bill to come in to clarify, and we'll see how that all goes. Anyway, so yes, so how do you want to do this? What's the best way to get through this so we could have a full understanding of what is written? Because I think we get the general gist of the format of the strategy of why Lee and his cohort wants to do it in a special session. I think we're on the same page on that one. We good with that one?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, it's just to make sure the public can't respond to it.
Okay. So, all right. So, whereas publicly educated, whatever, blah blah blah.
We can probably skip all the way to page
short
3.
title, parts and destination. Public school means. Actually, I do want to go back. I did see one that I want to make sure I understood correctly. Number. Let's see here. 49.6.3502 part definitions. Mm-hmm. And number 4.
Private school.
Private school means a school that is located in the state.
Yeah.
B, a private school as defined by 49 whatever, that is category 1, 2, or 3 approved by the Commissioner of Education, blah, blah, blah. Number 5 program. Number 6, no, that wasn't the one. Where'd it go?
I bet what you're asking is the categories, the 3 categories, and I'm going to have to look that up to be absolutely sure.
Because there's one, because to church-related register. This one, sorry. Part definitions number 2. Eligible student. Student is entitled to attend public school except for a student enrolled in homeschool as defined by whatever, or a church-related school as defined by whatever, with which the student's parent is associated, registered, or participating as a parent-teacher for purposes of whatever. So, for purposes of 49.630.50 A2 or A3, that's basically saying if you're homeschooling, it doesn't apply.
Right, or if your parent works for that private school, I'm assuming you're getting a discount. Like they're saying that if you're in that situation, this doesn't apply as well.
I think it's specifically if the parent is the educator of that child.
Right.
So there are some homeschool groups that are very opposed to this.
Absolutely.
And their opposition is basically a lack of trust.
Right, ed test. They don't want to test. That's all. We talked about that. Anyway, yeah.
And I am engaging with a group a little bit about their concerns, and their concerns are that anytime a bill exempts someone, anytime a bill exempts a category of people, that can always change. And what they kind of, I think, see it as a backdoor into more government control of their homeschools.
Right, because when we get further in, it does just specifically state, and this is one of the selling points for some of the more conservative members of the body, is that if you get our money, you have to take our test.
Yeah.
And I know that's a big no thank you to the homeschool community.
Right.
That's part of the whole point of why I homeschool my kids, because you guys suck and your tests are even worse.
Well, I wonder how the private school kind of quote-unquote industry is going to perceive that as well.
I do find that is a good question.
So what they're doing right now is the students who are in those private schools in the counties that are using the pilot program, the students who are taking vouchers have to take the TCAP tests, but their other students do not.
Right, but But that school has to administer it, or they could go. It just has to be administered somewhere. Because if I'm the director or principal or whatever the job title is of a private school, that's going to be an added cost. If I'm going to have to add, I don't necessarily have to add curriculum, but there is that question too, which is again half the point of why I sent my kid to a private school, because I don't want some of that curriculum stuff. And one of the complaints that a lot of public school parents have is we catch our teachers teaching for TCAPs instead of teaching for knowledge. And that's why I pull my kid out and send him to private school, because I don't want him to be taught to a test. But if my kid still has to take that test, there is some incentive in place for that private school to make sure that their students are testing well on that test, or at least the ones that have to take it, which again takes out some of the point to me. But anyway.
Well, I want to say it talks about in there that it almost kind of gives a little bit of leeway to the private school to essentially have some kind of standardized tests. Because it sounds like the state just wants to, they want an ROI. They want some kind of return on their investment.
No, I mean, I agree with it. If you're a fiscally conservative Republican in the state of Tennessee, if it's our money as the state, we deserve some data on whether or not.
But I think it gives a little bit of leeway to having some kind of. I don't think it says we want one standardized test.
I mean, I think it is the TCAP for the grade level.
That may be as it stands now.
The other version of the bill that is for regular session. So here's the other thing. Here's the other reason that I wasn't thinking about to have it in special session. If it fails in special session, they can still have a different version of the bill and run it for 3 more months, and then figure out who they need to pressure. But the version that is in there for regular session is specific to voucher students taking the same test as other students.
I mean, it's kind of practically speaking, not that practicality is part of the process here, but practically speaking, if it's a different version of a standard test, it's not a standard test.
Right.
It's like, well, you're a private school. We need you to take some test that equates to this test. Well, then take that test, because if you're taking a different test, it doesn't equate to that test.
Right.
It's not the same standard. And I mean, I think, again, reasonably on the conservative side of it, you say, yeah, that's our money. I want to know that our money is getting spent and that we're getting the metrics for that money spent. And if they're going to a private school, fine, whatever, but I still want the metrics. which is, again, half the point why a lot of people get out of public schools.
And so what they're showing right now, the kids who are in the voucher programs for those pilot programs, they're about 3 points behind public school students in every single category. They didn't excel anywhere when, I mean, we all hate the test. It's terrible. But as a comparative, it's there. And
right.
as a comparative, they're doing significantly worse.
But that, I mean, there's so much that can go into that. I'd be curious if there's deeper data into that. Because, again, you know, if the curriculum doesn't focus on some of the stuff that the test does, because the curriculum built doesn't care about the test because they never had to care about the test, then it stands to reason that their scoring would be down. Not that their educations are down. It's just that they don't cover that specific thing as well.
The other thing is when you look at the state standards, you have all these multiple standards that kids have to know, but they're not tested on all of the standards. The standards that they're tested on kind of change each year, and there's no way for teachers to know which ones they're going to be. If we take the third grade test, for example, I believe there are 80 standards in the English language arts portion, and when you look at a test for a single year, about 20 or 21 of those are tested. So, you know, they...
All right, that's a way to try to build out...
Yeah, so they rotate them around.
Right.
So you've got these 80 standards, and we're going to test on some random 20 of them.
Right. So it builds out... It's a way to build out specifically. Like, we know that we're supposed to... There's so much stuff they're supposed to learn or whatever, but we know these are on the test, so we'll focus on these. But if that's a bigger list, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. The part I was reading, I guess, maybe I got confused was... Let's see, where is that? 49-6-3507, Administration of Assessment for Recipients.
Yeah.
It says a nationally standardized achievement test that is aligned to the respective private school's institutional plan, or instructional plan, as determined by the rules promulgated by the State Board of Education. I guess that's where I thought maybe it was giving them a little bit of leeway to basically saying, well, our curriculum focuses on this, so that standardized test, we don't cover that, you know, for
So the State Board of Ed can publish a list of acceptable tests, basically.
I guess.
I don't think they have to. I think as long as they align to the private school's plan, whatever that is, and does that mean the private schools are going to have to start publishing their plans? Are those going to, you know?
I think it mentioned that.
Because it sounds like
the state, I guess, would have to have some kind of copy to verify what kind of tests.
Yeah. And at that point, what becomes a public record for that private school?
Yeah. If I was like, it sounds to me like if I'm a private school, I don't want anything to do with this.
Yeah.
All right. So anyway, we popped around here. So you said page 3, which is,
and I was just going to say, so that's different in this bill and the version that's there for the full session. The one for the full session, they want the TCAP. This one, they're given the leeway.
Yeah.
Right, because I could see as on a political point being like, no, it has to be that test. Let's go. You know, I'll fail this one, but we get to regular session, I'll pass that one.
Yeah.
Plus, you give me the bonus or kick out some funds to my county, and I'm totally happy with you.
And when we go to talk to the legislators, they say, well, so if we do it this way, are you going to be in favor of it? Well, no, we're not. And they're like, well, you know, you can't be against everything. Yeah, we kind of can, because there's no part of this that's really good for anybody.
We'll come back to that.
Okay.
So page 3, 49-6 through 3503, creation. There is creating an educational freedom scholarship program, blah, blah, blah. B, subject to appropriations and available funds. The eligible student applies to the 25-26 school year or any subsequent school year thereafter, subject to limitations of this part. Availability, starting with $20,000, as long as they use, what is it?
So here's what it takes. So they're going to start with 20,000 of these scholarships. The first 10,000, they want to have income based, but the income base that they are using is 300% of the amount that it would take for free or reduced lunch.
Right, to register for SNAP.
Far more than what the actual poverty level is. Right. It's about $172,000, I believe, and I've not done the math. I think that's just, I'm pulling that from something somebody said the other day.
Yeah, it's like 60, 55, something like that.
It's about $172,000 for a family of 4.
Yeah.
So that's not what we would really consider.
Yeah, that'd be fair. So right,
low
'cause
income.
The reduced lunch is like $55,000 a year.
Yeah.
So 3 times that's from 180, 175. Yeah. I
And
mean,
then the other 10,000 scholarships are for just anybody.
but functionally, you're not going to have there. It is, at least as current private schools stand, there is nobody that at standard reduced lunch pricing could afford the difference after the scholarship. If you're getting, like what's CAK here? I don't know what, like CAK is 12, 13,000 a year.
I don't know.
I'm trying to. I want to say I looked it up a couple. This was like a year ago when the last version of this was getting argued about. I would say it was over 10. That's the moral of the story. There's not a lot of families who are making $55,000 a year that could afford the $4,000 difference, assuming they get the scholarship part in the first place.
And it's not just a $4,000 difference, though. You've got difference in uniforms,
Transportation costs,
costs. All the clubs and things you have to be there for all the time.
Right.
Right, but I guess that's my point. Is that it's unrealistic to have any. There's no way they're going to get those 10,000 out to lower income students, because by comparison they are lower income students to the other private school kids. But in in the reduced lunch standard, there's no way those 10,000 could ever get taken.
Yeah.
Which I'm not trying to say good thing or bad thing. It's just functionally a fact. It's not a possibility. So if you're going to get all 20,000 of this first year scholarship out, you have to have a bigger number than $55,000 a year household income.
And later in the bill, in subsequent years, there's a metric that allows them to keep rolling it out to higher income people. Like if you don't have enough low income applicants, here's the order you roll it out to other people. So it could eventually, it's really the numbers there. There's nothing about this that's for low income students, not in reality.
All right. So so part B, number 1, I think this is the next question. Beginning in the 26-27 school year, the number of scholarships available for the respective school year will be determined by the funds appropriated for scholarships, with plus funds returned from last year, basically.
Yeah, and this is a little different than most other departments. If you have unused funds, they generally roll back into the general fund, into the rainy day fund or whatnot, and then they can be reallocated to whatever. But this one, the funds all roll back into itself so that it continually grows.
I think they mentioned it once about the Hope Scholarship, but I wonder if it does the same. As far as rolling back into itself.
Right.
I don't know, it may be a standard thing for like educational scholarships. That
I think that's the next section we're going to get to, because
always stays in that fund.
It's lottery and gambling that this fund is coming from.
Right.
And
Same with the Hope Scholarship.
Well,
like the Tennessee Lottery goes into that.
Right. So this is technically going to be taken out of the Hope Scholarship Fund as it stands.
Right. So it's
which I'm okay with. You know how I feel about the lottery, but
it's taking it out of higher ed.
Right.
So what's that going to do to higher ed?
It makes it sound like it's a separate, but I don't know if they have tried to mix them together, because the Hope Scholarship is I think it's just scholarships to get into college.
Right, but the Hope Scholarship is funded by the lottery.
By the Tennessee Lottery.
And what they're saying on
this
one...
This was like, quote-unquote, sports betting.
And it's going to include funds from both. Now, the question is how much of the... I'd love to go on a deep dive audit the lottery and how much money they make. It's probably an obnoxiously obscene amount of money, but how much they cost to do it and all the crap that goes along with it. But... because that is, the more front end question on it is, like, on a year in, year out basis, what percentage of the available funds for the Hope Scholarship are getting used? I don't know. I don't know. I have no idea.
I know that for years and years, when it's been suggested, why can't we use some lottery funds for public schools? They have repeatedly said, "Oh no, we can't take any of that for public schools. There's not enough."
I mean, that was because, okay, so you don't know.
We know they were lying.
Right. But my pitch from the beginning, because I've lived an entire life of the year after is when things kick in.
Yeah.
So we graduated in 2000. The first year seniors were eligible was kids that graduated in 2001. And so I went to college with zero Hope Scholarship dollars. Everybody that I knew that was a year under me that from high school or something that came up, they had at least a percentage of theirs paid for with the Hope Scholarship. But my argument, even back then, and maybe because I was bitter because I didn't get it or whatever, was always like, why don't we make smarter high schoolers instead of more dumb college kids? It's always been my argument for it. We don't need more stupid kids. We don't need more stupid kids going to college. We need more smarter kids graduating from high school.
It's not what college scholarships are intended to be.
Well, but
to help offset the cost.
But the sales pitch when we brought the lottery, it was always education. We're bringing the lottery in to pay for education.
Right.
If that's what we want to bring the lottery in to pay for education for, well, then let's play it. Let's keep it on lower ed. You know, if we do that much better, kids will get academic scholarships. If we can get better kids graduating from high school, you know, there's plenty of there's plenty of programs out there for smart kids that can't afford school that isn't a Hope Scholarship. It's just there's not that many smart kids coming out of especially low income high schools. Jennifer nodded. You guys can't see that. I'm just saying. Jennifer nodded. She agrees with me.
I'm nodding in general.
Still a politician. Anyway, yeah, my rant about the Hope Scholarship aside, Hope Scholarship funds are part of what they're paying this out of. And this, to me, is where I think this is where it gets to the brass tacks of the game for at least the historical argument that you and I have had, as well as plenty of other people had, is, okay, so we have this hold harmless clause, which essentially, if I'm understanding correctly, Knox County Schools has about 60,000 kids. If all 20 somehow come out of Knox County Schools next year, of this first year of it, that drops Knox County down to 40,000 kids. The state will still fund their 60,000 kids worth of students.
Yes, but for how long?
One at a time.
That it won't go down year to year. That it basically that if the numbers change,
right?
Because the numbers go down from the previous year, they won't change it. But I wonder, because essentially that would just keep it as the same numbers for year on year on year. If you can't,
right? Assuming that you
can't adjust for
the same amount
year.
or less, right? So if there's the same amount or less of students, the number would remain exactly the same,
right.
as long as they permit.
They can never decrease
right.
the
but
number.
Then you have to also look at the funding formula laws,
right.
And in the funding formula laws, it's based on how many students you have,
right? It's always, but which even the old funding formula was that
right.
way too.
So if they're saying that we're funded on a student-based funding formula, well, then it's no longer a student-based funding formula.
Right.
Then that was the big selling point for TISA.
The TISA's whole point was to prep for this. I agree with that. Yeah. Because it makes it so that there is a specific number per student that they can then apply. They can say that amount that the formula kicks out is how much we're doing in vouchers, which is exactly what they did.
But so let's say if the state could afford to pay for scholarships for 20,000 kids and pay for those 20,000 kids to still be in their public schools, why aren't we just putting that money in the public schools so that whatever the deficit is?
Because my buddy that owns the private school wants the kickback.
Well, yeah.
But
okay.
but I'm not trying to say that is okay. That's not my point. Other than to say that if we're honest about what's on paper, I understand that we're talking politicians and we're talking the way the system works and stuff like that. And what's on paper is never what is reality. But if we're honest about what's on paper, at the end of the day, Knox County Schools over the next 5 years could lose 20% of its student body and at minimum have the funding that they have right now with that many fewer students on paper. Can it change in the future? Yes. Because they could go 2 years into this thing and say, this sucks, and scrap the whole thing. But at least on paper, there is no future where Knox County Schools will have less income coming from the state than they do now, as is written.
It doesn't say that it would be indefinitely or that would it be forever.
That's where I kind of got the vagueness of.
Because none of them
it was saying it wouldn't go down
year
to year, but eventually, like you got that question of if it keeps going down, you can't just expect.
Knox County can't afford to not raise property taxes. 20 years now, we cannot afford to not raise property taxes. Yet we've done it anyway. You know, like the likelihood of change is 100%. We're going to have change to what it is, no matter what we do.
Right. I guess that's where because it doesn't talk about that. It basically, just kind of reiterates that the funding will not be reduced to public schools.
Right.
And it just never really talks about it.
But again, realistically, if you take inflationary factors into the game and stuff like that, it's real dollars that they have to guarantee the minimum of.
Right.
If the current number is, what is it, state. I don't know what the state kick said. The total county budget was $1 billion. Schools was 620 something million this year. Is that right? Give or take. But if that true number of 627 continues indefinitely, 10 years from now, that's equivalent to 400 million, no matter how many students we have, and that would suck. Just for inflationary rules to get into play. But again, I'm pretty sure the audience, as well as Jennifer, knows how I feel about vouchers. I don't know how I feel about vouchers. If I want to be any more clear on it than I have been, my point is only to try to at least articulate what's on the page. I understand 1,000% that what's on the page is not reality, and I think we started the show with it is 100% conjecture. We are collectively playing conjecture with what the actual play is here, other than what's on the page. That's the other. I just feel like I need to clarify that part because I'm not advocating for at all. But at least what's on the page is every teacher in Knox County gets a $2,000 random bonus to pay for their silence. Your blood money, take it and buy something nice with it, and enjoy it while you can, and then go get a job at one of these private schools that opens up and make more money because that's how it works.
They very clearly put in there that $2,000 is not to be counted as salary; it's to be counted as a bonus. So that is taxed differently.
Yeah, but that's a federal government tax. There's no state tax on that.
Right, but that still they're not going to get $2,000.
Well, I mean, well, that's not true for me anymore. But I used to make $15 an hour. If I ever took home more than 12, there was something wrong. But yeah, I agree. I think that federal law craziness too. I agree 100%. The idea that a bonus is taxed more than your regular pay just seems obnoxious, especially when you're a salaried employee. Anyway, moving on per se, maybe so no more than 5,000 can be added per year until we hit the total number of possible students in the state.
As long as funding allows. I think it kind of throws in that little caveat.
Right. So get out there and start betting on sports. I think there's a basketball game on right now. You can do it to help fund some private schools.
Yeah.
26-27 school year, the number of applications received exceeds the number of scholarships available for the next year. The department shall award scholarships in the following order. Whatever. People that had it before.
Yeah, that whole page is just...
Right. People that had it before, people that have 300% of whatever. Scholarship amounts and allowable uses, just pretty straightforward, I think.
So the allowable uses, it's kind of interesting because it makes it sound like there's going to be some kind of leftover money after you pay tuition. Like after you've paid your $7,000 of
Remind
your
me before it's done.
$12,000 tuition.
We're going to start a school in this room. We'll talk about that when we get done. I got a plan.
We need to look at that sometime.
Okay, I'm in.
I've looked at the cost of starting a private school, and it's crazy.
Anyway, sorry. So I get what you're saying, though. So there's a whole list of things you could spend it on as if you're going to have any left past tuition.
Right.
I think it even mentions you could use it for Uber because it talks about transportation.
Mm-hmm. Tutoring services, fees for transportation to and from private school in which the recipient is enrolled, pay to a fee for service transportation provider that meets the requirements established by the department. Does it have a seatbelt?
So here's a place where some of
they got Uber Kids now. Have you seen that?
No.
Yeah, it's like Uber Kids. It's an Uber Teen account, I think is what they call it. And so your kid it's your account, but you basically give kid access, and Uber will send better drivers, better star drivers and stuff like that. And then you get to you can track your kid on their phone anyway, but Uber will tell you where your kid is.
Right.
In the car,
requested to go to here.
Right. And you can approve the request for them to go there. It's kind of, I think it's kind of a neat little whatever. As a standalone, not for the school part of it, but just as a standalone thing that you can.
I wouldn't do it as a parent.
I mean, there's been 15 comedians have done the joke. Like we grew up, don't talk to strangers, don't get in a stranger's car, right. Don't tell people who you are on the internet. And there's multiple apps now that the whole point is to tell people who you are and get in a stranger's car.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think it's a neat. I think it's a neat service because I think it's the reality of the future. You've got my niece who's 17 now. She's one of those. She was going to drive. Doesn't matter. She's driving. She's going to as soon as she was. She's like, Dad, take me driving. Drive. Hey, Uncle Seth, can I drive a car? No, you can't drive my car. I don't trust you at all. But and then her little sister, who's now 15. It's like, yeah, I'll get my learner's permit at some point. I don't know. Like, there's a whole bunch of kids that just don't care about driving.
Right. They don't see the need for it because they know there's other options.
Right. If only there was mass transit. Anyway, I'm not going down that road hole. That's another thing.
I was having a middle school band thing years ago, and one of the kids, I didn't know this, his parents were out of town that weekend. We were having this band thing, and he was there, and we were talking, and he told me he took a cab to get there that day. And I was just like, wait, you took a cab in Knoxville? What? And it was actually out in Carnes. And I'm like, we have cabs in Carnes?
Well, let's okay. I'm not doing this to be rude and age you, but when? Like, we're talking.
It would have been around 2004.
Okay, so this would be pre right.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, there weren't Ubers then.
I mean, I remember like when I was like, because 2004 when I was down at 2004 I was bartending on campus. We always had like a stack of cab company cards behind the bar.
Yeah,
it's like, hey, dumbass, call this guy and get out of here.
Late 2000s, I was like, working for a company where we were picking up people at the airport. They still had one side of the airport that there was at least like 15 or 20 taxis.
We still have a couple
just constantly lined up there.
They're still here.
Yeah.
And I had him call his parents and see if I could take him home, so he wouldn't have to take a cab back home. Because I mean, we don't want some
expensive.
We don't want a stranger knowing you're home alone.
Right.
And it was.
I mean, yeah, because it's middle school. It's a 14, 15 top. So 15 would be a freshman.
And it was when we had cell phones, but not cell phones with maps.
Right.
So I got him home fine. And then I ended up calling my husband. I'm like, hey, I need you to look on your computer and figure out where I am.
Get on that map. Get on that map quest.
Because I got the kid home, and then I couldn't get home.
Call AAA and give me a triptychs. Give me one of them triptychs for this thing. So anyway,
so here's something. When we're looking at, we keep thinking about this funding is not going to pay for any of this stuff, but it could pay for this stuff. My nephew went to a private school, and the first year he was there, it was a scholarship. So if you have a student that has a scholarship to a private school, and then they have a voucher, then they could use their voucher for all of these other things.
Who provided the scholarship?
The school did.
Again, we are implementing what we assume is going to happen. I would think the schools would reduce the number of stuff that they put out like that.
Yeah.
Another one that I am confident of, and I will place money on, and I will go on to DraftKings right now to help raise funds for this school voucher funds, because I'm going to use my gambling sites to do it. But I will bet you that the cost and tuition of current private schools will go up faster than inflationary rates comparable.
That's what they've done in other states.
I mean, I think it's just inevitable, and so even the families who are currently affording them that are getting this kickback are ended up going to be equivalently out of pocket by the time this settles down. First couple of years, they're going to save some money, but as this settles down, it's going to be equivalently out of pocket for people who already are paying for it.
But then we're looking at this big long list of how they can use the funds. Someone is assuming that this money will be available after their tuition is paid.
Right.
So how is this money still available would be my question.
It just makes it sound good, right?
I mean, I think
some left over. You can use it on this, and this, and this, and this, and this.
I mean, I think there's the question is could it functionally be possible for a private school to pop up and have a tuition less than the voucher total?
I think it would be
Can
really
you
difficult.
figure out? Could somebody figure out the business model to go under? Because I mean, if you could at least if proof of concept says you have a good enough product that you're going to educate the kids well, and you can go under that, and these are available, you're going to max out. I would presume you're going to max out the capacity of your program pretty easily. Because then it's like, okay, well, you only got to spend $5,000 per year with me. You're going to have 20, 70, 36 or whatever it is left over, $2,000 or so left over to pay for X, Y, and Z over there that you could still spend the fund on. That's the legitimate question. Is that going to be something that there's even a possibility of seeing? Is non-faith-based affordable private school models that can exist inside this formula? Because I don't know. The states that have had stuff before, has that been something that's ever been seen?
Seems far-fetched unless they're getting some crazy subsidies.
We've seen in other states people misusing their voucher money, but it wasn't, the ones I know of weren't set up this way. So maybe it was a homeschool group and they used their voucher money to, take a trip. Or they, maybe they had multiple children and they took them all to Disney with their voucher money. That kind of thing has happened in other states.
But we haven't seen any of these other states have any new, like, out-of-the-box, non-traditional private school model try to come in as a new entity.
I've only seen them use them for, like, the homeschool model kind of thing.
As far as misuse of funds? Or just
no,
anything?
I think there have been been others too.
Okay, so you mean other than non-faith-based, kind of more traditional private schools? Is that what you mean?
I'm thinking of the places where it's easier to use that small amount of money because it's not a huge amount of money. You can't.
I took my kid to Disney. I couldn't. That would be my. Both kids. I would take up the totality of their vouchers or more or less the totality of their vouchers for a trip to Disney.
Yeah.
Because I got to pay for me too. Am I allowed to pay for my trip to Disney?
And
I got to go. I can't let them go myself.
There have been, I think, also other states pay more for students to go to public schools, so their vouchers are more. So that's a difference too. So if you're giving your kid a $12,000 voucher, it's going to be different. Some places, the students enrolled in private school and the parent has bought a computer for themselves. So,
I would.
So, the parent's using this computer for an eBay business on the side,
right.
but it's the state money that was supposed to be used for the kid.
Maybe my house is different.
I let him use it sometimes.
My house, I would say maybe my house is different, but there is nothing in this house that is mine. None of it. Anyway, okay. So, unspent funds, which again is kind of humorous in its own intent, like there's going to be any left over, has to go back into, right? It goes back into the fund, not into the general fund for future use.
But that's unspent funds for vouchers not taken. Unspent funds per student seems that they can spend those.
Okay. Recipient scholarship amount remains open and all available scholarship funds remain in the recipient scholarship account for one school year to another unless one of the events described in subsection B occurs.
So it sounds like it could roll over from one school year to the next.
Right. So theoretically, if somehow we had a $5,000 a year public school or private school, I get my $7,000 voucher. That $2,000 will stay in an account assigned to my student, and then next year I pay $5,000 again, and that account will have $4,000 left over. Do it again, depending on how many years my student has left at school. I'm basically going to bank $2,000 a year in my account that I can then go spend on anything on the list above that we just discussed.
The way I read it, it only goes from 1 year to the next. So basically, if you didn't spend all of yours from the previous year, you could spend it in the next year. But I may have been misreading it.
No, you're right.
They didn't extend it to like roll over year to year to year, but it could roll over from 1 year to the next.
So as long as the account remains open, the funds remain in the scholarship account from 1 year to another, unless one of the things in this subsection. So
they finish, they graduate, they enroll back into a public school, graduate from high school, enroll into a public school, complete 13 years, whether you graduate or not, withdraw from the scholarship program, or the department disqualifying the recipient from participating in the program due to the recipient's noncompliance. So it stays there unless you spend it, and it can accrue year over year over year if you somehow could figure out how to do it.
Okay.
So in my ridiculous hypothetical, I could bank $2,000 a year, and then my kid's senior year in high school, I'd have $20,000 that I could then go back up and spend on tuition,
uniforms,
textbooks, uniforms, transportation, computer hardware. Could I buy a car?
Transportation,
maybe.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'd certainly, or just get them into SAT tutors and stuff like that would certainly be applicable.
Yeah, it does mention that. Yeah.
Probably could make the argument that like a trip to the trip to visit colleges could be paid for.
Yeah.
Unspent funds account closure. The recipient scholarship account remains open, and all available scholarship funds remain unless the recipient scholarship fund from one year to the other. Yeah, we just did that. Administration of assessment for recipients as a condition. Okay, so this was the testing part we were talking about, right?
Yeah.
All right.
So here's the trick there. A nationally standardized achievement test that's aligned to the respective private school's instructional plan. That sounds okay for the private school until you get to the next part. As determined by rules promulgated by the State Board of Education. So we don't know what that test can really be because by this, the State Board of Education gets to decide.
What's accredited?
They get to decide which achievement tests. They get to make the rules. And
right, and it could very well be within that private school that some admin in that private school writes a 5-question test, and the Department of Ed says, "Yep, that works."
Yep, but more likely they would say it has to be the TCAP.
See, that doesn't make any sense, though.
You think it'd just be out of ease, or for their part?
But hold on, but okay, so
for their accountability.
So the department, the Board of Ed at the state of Tennessee is appointed by the governor. Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, Lee's on his way out, so that's kind of irrelevant. But
it could also change.
But if the point, but I would say, but I guess my point is if the part of the presumed reasoning for this is Governor Lee wants to kick back money to his private school friends, then his Board of Ed would unlikely piss off his private school friends. That would be incongruent in logic. Now, obviously, Lee's not going to be there for much longer. But at the end of the day, if one of the underlying themes here is that his Board of Ed should be on board with his point.
I mean, outside of administering, it's not that much on the private school to basically be like, oh, you want us to take that test? Okay, cool. They've just got to figure out how to administer it. They're not having
right,
to go
but we don't want to do it, and we don't want to deal with it. And your governor, who put this whole thing in place, is my buddy, and I kicked him back a whole bunch of money to get us here. I'm not putting extra shit on my plate. So it's just because I'm taking your money.
I mean, could the private school basically be like, state says you guys have to take this. We're not going to do it during school time. You're going to take it from 3:30 till 4:30 for this next week.
I mean, it says they have to admin it, though, so they can't. I guess they could do it outside of school hours, but they still have to do the admin work.
Okay.
Do they?
Is that right? Am I crazy? Or the student just has to take it?
The student must be given the test. It doesn't
damn,
say,
Sam!
Yeah.
Nice pickup, buddy. I missed that one.
It must be annually administered. It doesn't say that the school has to administer it. It says that the student.
So that's what you could use your leftover scholarship money for. That leftover money to go pay the proctor to do this test. See, we rolled back the jokes.
And I bet Pearson would have proctors because they do.
Right.
And so then Pearson gets double money because now you're getting the money for the test and the money for the proctors.
Look at that. Sam, way to find. Jennifer didn't see that. I'm impressed, buddy. I'm proud of you.
I was just thinking the way that the school could kind of try to save face. If the students' parents were like, well, we went to this school, so we wouldn't have to take standardized tests or whatever.
It's like, well, the state's making you take it, but we're not giving it to you.
Right.
But we could sell it to you because you have to take it to keep getting your scholarship.
They could also make them go to another school to do it. They could make them go. So years ago when we first started expanding homeschools, homeschool students still had to take the TCAPs. They had to, I don't know if it was under certain umbrellas or what. I was a new teacher. I don't know. But students would have to come in from homeschools on those TCAP days. So you would have a couple of extra students here and there in a classroom who had come in.
I can't imagine the social shock to those students.
They were fine.
Really?
Yeah.
I would think.
Fucking shut-ins.
But still, but okay, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, like,
I've seen 20 people in one room. Where am I?
20 people in one room, all lined up, quiet, sitting at their desk doing X, Y, and Z. That's not something I think they've seen.
Out, man.
I don't think that's something that they've only seen once a year. If that's the formula, I could see that being quite uncomfortable.
Maybe.
Hey, let's go sing karaoke right now. How often do you sing karaoke? Not very often. It's uncomfortable.
Oh, you're
Jennifer
talking about
sings
singing
karaoke.
karaoke versus like sitting down in a quiet room.
Okay, so what's the most common thing amongst like third and fourth graders?
So-
the new kid's weird,
I think it would be the equivalent of when we took like the ACT,
right?
and we took it in a cafeteria with 100 other people.
And some of them, you don't know. Some of them you do. Where this kid's like doesn't know any of them or knows a very few of them.
I was in a regular classroom with just standard classroom size.
Oh, I was in a giant
was too.
cafeteria.
Actually, yeah, it was one of the new rooms in Bearden High School that had just gotten built.
Was it?
That I took mine in. I don't know. That just like everything else, I didn't try very hard, and I did good enough.
Yeah.
Knox County Schools. They educated me so well, I didn't even have to try. Okay. Anyway, back to autonomy of the schools who receive money. A private school that enrolls recipients in autonomous and are autonomous and not an agent of the state.
Oh, wait,
love that
let me go
word.
back.
Okay, sorry.
Sorry. There is a thing that says that the school has to administer. It's in a different
See, Sam,
section.
you dumbass.
No, he was
hypothesizing.
right on this other page, but then
I was so excited though. I thought that was a brilliant catch, but apparently Jennifer's smarter than you.
okay, so there's
Where'd you go to high school?
Morristown West.
See, not Knox County. See, that's why
Morristown
she's
Hamlin
smarter
High
than you.
School West. But this is another part. It's another section, and it says because back here it said it must be annually administered to the student, but then it says each private school that enrolls recipients shall annually administer the test required. Doesn't say what the test required pursuant to that subsection back there to the recipients enrolled in the school. So it makes it clear that it's not to everyone. So if you're a private school and you only have 2 voucher kids, then you have to make those arrangements
Right.
to administer the test to those 2.
It also says that you're obliged to provide the data from said test to the state in the timely manner as required.
You don't have to necessarily give them their name. You still have to give them
and
like
it-
age, sex.
Right, and it includes house income level, sex, and race. To the Office of Research and Education Accountability shall submit in an annual report.
You don't tell us who it is, but give us some things to help us narrow it
You
down.
have 3 voucher kids. There are 90 kids in your school, and you have 6 black kids. 3 of your voucher kids are black kids. So the math here is pretty easy on figuring out which ones are your voucher kids and which ones aren't. But either way,
I think since the Board of Ed can still make the rules, I bet they could put something in there that would let them sort of outsource it to another public school
but if
the administration.
if the wording requires administration, then it should be. The theory would be at least the cost that pricing's included with your tuition, right? Like they couldn't do that as an extra cost for that student, could they? I guess they could.
So the way the test is administered currently, I don't think those funds are specific to schools. I think it's all done at the state level. So I think the funding for the test is going to be separate. That's a question, though.
But in the current format, you're saying, but that's
so
state,
like
but it's currently state funded, right?
State pays $1 billion to Pearson and then sends out the test to the schools.
So they pay that $1 billion to Pearson, and they send out the test to schools, but now they have to send it to 500 other schools, but only 5 or 6 here, there, and everywhere.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'm following it. I'm picking it up. I'm hearing what you're saying. Whew, we're getting deep. I love it. All right. Sorry, Sam. I was really excited about that one, but apparently they're still kind of, but it's still unclear where the funding part of it comes into play.
Yeah.
But that's also assuming that the board requires the TCAP and not some other test is okay. Because then if some other test is okay, that throws that whole thing out the window.
That does. And if some other test is okay, how much does that other test cost?
Right. And as a private school, are you going to include that as part of your tuition, or are you going to?
Sure, we'll accept the results of another test, but we're not going to pay for that unless you want to take the standardized TCAP.
And
TCAP
then,
we'll do for free, but outside of that, we'll accept other results.
Right, but as a private school, is it better off for you to just be like, I'm going to wrap that up, I'm going to wrap the cost of this up in the tuition price, or is this going to be an additional fee as part of that I only apply to X number of students? It could go a number of ways.
depends on if they're already doing a standardized test that fits in their
That
plan.
fit, right.
Then they could just use that same
Right.
test.
It's just your final in your sophomore year. That's the test. Whatever. If it's already there, right. But still, even that, I like as the evil as the evil capitalist that I am, I'd be like, I'd include that as a fee. Why wouldn't you include that as a fee and just add it to everybody's tuition?
But then
make $7 extra a year per
the
person.
stupid part is that then they have to take those test results and give them to the Department of Ed Office of Accountability so they can compare them to other students, but the other students are taking other tests.
Maybe.
Probably.
Well, right.
We don't know.
Depending on what the board does.
Yeah, it depends on those rules that are promulgated later.
Right. Okay. Well, yeah, we can have. See, this is where this is why my show sucks, is because I can't stay on topic, because now I want to go down this rabbit hole of how ridiculous, again, going back to my hemp thing, how ridiculous the idea is that as your elected official, I voted to put this law into place that gives somebody who's not elected the right to actually make the law.
Yeah.
Right.
Here's as it hits, but things could change. Just to let you know,
but somebody
it could change.
Somebody appointed and confirmed. But we don't know who anymore. They could have been here from 6 administrations ago. We don't. But they're there.
I believe in this bill, but I also believe that maybe somebody else should be able to change it.
Didn't our previous board chair? Didn't she just get tapped by Trump? Isn't she going to be the?
I think the Department of Education.
Department of Education.
The former Commissioner of Ed, Peter Schwinn.
Yeah.
Let's go, Tennessee. Get you some. Because, they're trying... that's a question. Put a pin in that. Jennifer may know the answer to...
Educational Commissioner?
To our
Department of Ed, because that's Linda McMahon, I think, is who's up for that.
I think she's like a second, like a deputy.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Deputy Commissioner of Education, of Department of... whatever.
I was surprised when I saw that. I didn't think she had that much national recognition, but...
Well, if the goal is to try to destroy schools, you got somebody that's good at destroying schools, put them up.
Yeah.
But that's a separate. That I do want to ask that question. You're not allowed to leave until we talk about the National Board of Education, because I don't understand what they do. But that's a separate thing. Well, let's not finish. We're never going to finish this. Let's talk further about the voucher bill before we move on to national issues. Limitations on participation, connection to other education programs. Notwithstanding other law to the contrary, the department shall deny a scholarship to an eligible student for the same school year in which the student is participating in the Tennessee Education Savings Account program. So somebody that's in Memphis right now that's already on it can't get on the new one.
Roll back to the bottom of the page before, page 8 at the bottom, the autonomy of schools.
Yeah.
So this is saying that the school is autonomous and not an agent of the state. However, the Department of Ed makes the rules.
Well, yeah.
So,
we're not an agent.
All right, fine. Screw the whole thing. I want to get. So I want to start a private school. Me and you, Jennifer, you know how to teach. I got a couple dollars, not that many, but we'll figure it out. Just process-wise, not cost. Just process with the state. How do I get the state of Tennessee to accredit my private school?
There's a big, long list of stuff you have to have.
I'm not a sex offender.
No.
Oh.
So
I was hoping to check at least one box off real quick.
There are building requirements.
Really?
Yeah, fire marshal requirements. It's huge. I'll send it to you.
Okay.
It's a lot, because the last time you asked this question, I went home and went, well, I wonder what it would cost. And I started looking it up. I'm like, holy. It was a lot.
Does it cut out much to do a virtual school in that same kind of format? Pretty much just building requirements.
Okay, more to the point, it's like are the building requirements outside of what normal commercial building requirements are? Like, would it be something that I could lease some office space and it's going to check most of those fire marshal markers and stuff like that?
I would assume so. Just ADA compliant, yeah.
That's what I mean. Like, it's like, short of building my own building, if I were to take over, I don't know, like some food city that vacated a decade ago and it's been sitting empty forever.
Maybe not a food city. Maybe something more.
I'm just thinking the food city already has the plumbing and the kitchen stuff in place for the cafeteria.
Yeah. So there are bathroom requirements, like how many stalls you have to have.
I was just thinking a big trough. Is trough not cool anymore?
No, there's like how many toilets, how many urinals. There are like requirements for all of those. How many students?
I love bureaucracy. This sounds like my jam.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Per enrolled student or period? Like there's a minimum plus?
Probably per capacity.
I think it's like so many stalls per female students, so many stalls per male students.
It's 2025. They're all students. I have no genders in my students. They're all just
Well, the federal government's probably going to change that, so
they already changed
you'll probably
that.
have to change.
They already did. Which I'm just trying to squeak in some. I'm just trying to sneak by for you. I'm not trying to.
Oh, but the person that decides where you fall on the accreditation of private schools list is State Commissioner of Education.
Right. Well, that's right. That's I knew that part was part of it. But anyway.
So if you want to have a school that is significantly non-traditional,
I'm thinking Wicca. I'm thinking.
yes, if you want to do that, you're going to have to.
I'm thinking blood sacrifice.
Go through the person appointed by the governor, and that person decides and makes the rules.
Again, because that's the thing. Like, okay, but going back to kind of the joke around about it, but in a more serious way, I do want blood sacrifice in my elementary school, but in a more like realistic, especially I don't know. I guess most of the back to the office thing has kind of happened. Knoxville never really got super virtually worky anyway. But like you talk about like New York and stuff like that, it's having a huge problem in commercial real estate because you have these office buildings that are vacant. And it's like, okay, well, I got this vacant office building. I might have to add a few toilets. But for the most part, like all the other stuff's probably in play. As far as the building requirements parts go. So I can get probably a decent lease on a, 5-year lease where 5 year with a 5+5 lease or something like that to subdivide this into, I don't know, like a 100 student school. Now, building requirements aside, that and building cost is building cost. That's probably negligibly different from any other business that's going to take up some office space. Like some bank or whatever has a floor that they do all their office work in. Whatever, it's probably about the same cost as that. So I don't know. I get my point of all that is my assumption is the building cost is probably not that big a deal. Unless you're trying to build from scratch. And if you're trying to build from scratch, that's a long-term game, and it's probably still not that big a deal once you depreciate it across the timeline of how long you expect the school to be functional. So 100 students, we're looking at $7 million a year. Is that the right math? What's the math on that? Knox County Schools, people. 7,000 times 100, 700,000. Come on, people. $700,000 a year for your kids.
How much is your insurance going to be on that building with 100 kids in it?
Own or lease.
You already said lease.
Because you're going to have liability insurance.
Sure.
To cover
that's
those
a good question.
Kids.
Okay. I don't know. I mean, I have a bunch of high and drunk people in my place. My insurance isn't too bad. They're probably less problematic than kids. You're right. Kids are worse. I mean, I was thinking about being on like the 7th floor and having a slide that goes down to the playground.
And you're going to need about 35 square feet per student in each classroom.
Okay. I mean, I'm assuming that it's about it's again. I'm using bar experience because that's what I've got. Well, I've had fire marshal. I've had 1,000 fire marshal visits. I've had 1,000 inspections on X, Y, and Z. I'm assuming the capacities the capacity rules are probably negligible in difference. So I'd say the tavern, I could have 100 students in the tavern. It's 3,000 square feet, so it'd be a little bit too small. I'd have to have like 90 kids, I think.
Yeah. But then if you're going to break them down into groups,
I mean that depends on my curriculum. I could do.
You don't have enough bathroom space.
I was about to tell you how many bathrooms you got.
We're talking about Happy Holler. It is all a bathroom. Everywhere is a bathroom. And heroin. Anyway, yes, I'm all over the map on this, and that's my fault.
You could maybe pay the difference that way.
What?
Heroin.
Yeah. I don't know. The clientele for heroin down there is really cheap, so
it's not the money.
It's not a lot. There's not a lot of money. So they'll do whatever you got. They'll do stuff. It's just the cash part's the hard part. Anyway,
So now you know who not to have in your drug business would be me,
no, you just
because I don't know.
you just need to think outside the box on payment programs. It's not about you take the money out of the conversation. You get different ways to get paid. But my point being is, I think like again, I'm just using the example that I have like legitimate physical whatever like specific knowledge on that one, just because I do have that lease and stuff like that. I think. I think the building is subsect too. I think it's more like, my point is, okay, so like you said, if I'm going to try to subdivide that space or whatever, is it implied in state law that I have to have a K through 12 program that is individual by age, kindergarten,
No.
first grade, second grade? I could literally, can I do a one-room schoolhouse regardless of age?
I don't know. I think it would have to. So,
But better, I'm sorry, let me re-ask the question. Would I get approval from the State Board of Education on a program that involved single classroom, multiple age groups?
I don't know which category that would put you in, because there are categories 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So how many certified teachers you have?
I'd say if you had a good
might
enough
depend
game
on that.
plan or
Yeah.
school plan, basically. I'm assuming they would expect you to have at least, depending on student count, at least so many teachers to
Yeah.
where, you could, validate that, having K through 12 and that, this age group, we're going to go over this and then give them 30 minutes to do this while I go over to this group. I'd say if you laid it out in a good enough plan, you may be able to get that approved, but...
And if your certifications of your teachers could cover it all.
Right.
Like,
Right.
I have
Again,
a,
the state's going to look at
I
how
can
well did you
teach-
teach them at the end of the year. That's probably more what they're looking at.
I can teach 7th through 12th grade English, but I can't teach 6th graders.
Like, look, man, you know my feelings on it. Really, all I want to do is put YouTube on, and that's all my education is through YouTube. I just have to have one accredited teacher that's good enough to set curriculum up for a whole bunch of YouTubers. They're just going to sit there on their tablets and watch YouTube all day. That's absolutely my curriculum plan.
Okay.
We'll look on the website and see what we can figure out.
Look, my 8th grader has
So YouTube stuff for use?
yeah.
Okay.
I think so. I don't know. I'm
if
sure there's plenty of Knox County school
I'd say
teachers that'll pull
if
YouTube
your
up every
school
once
was
in a while.
free, you could probably do that. But if you're charging for the school and
No
using
school is
non-fair
free.
use material to quote unquote educate,
Their sponsorship and ads are still in play. It's not free. It's not free. It's not free. I have to, like, my students will have to watch an ad for Dino trucks or whatever.
Or other
what's your
stuff.
school paying into that?
Hopefully, like cigarettes and weed commercials, all chalked in my 3rd grade education level.
Depends on that browser history.
Yeah, puppies and whatever. I don't know. Anyway, sorry.
So when we get down into the autonomy thing, it makes it
Thank
sound
you, Jennifer,
like
for bringing us back to reality here.
it makes. Well, I'm afraid I'm going to forget this. It makes it sound like that private school is going to maintain all its autonomy. It can do whatever it wants to. It does not expand the regulatory authority of the state. There's no extra government anything on you, and the fees and entrance exams. Wait a minute. Did I just flip a page? I flipped a page. Let me get back here. So, can't oppose any additional rules, no regulations. Their recipients will have maximum freedom. But here's the thing. They can't impose any of these additional rules on private schools beyond the rules narrowly tailored to enforce the requirements of this program. So, we're not going to impose any additional rules besides whatever rules
Yeah,
the
that we
Commissioner
just
of
made up.
Education makes up later.
Right.
And that's why private schools are really concerned, because, it
Right, well,
says
'cause-
we're not going to impose anything else on you, except that we are.
I have no doubt that Marsha's going to win the governor race next 2 years from now. Anyway, I have no doubt that is what's in play. I don't know. Maybe Gloria wants a rematch. Let's see what happens. Let's get crazy. Maybe a Democrat somehow wins the governor of the state of Tennessee. Is anybody going to be okay with the commissioners that a Democrat, under the current format, is anybody that's sitting here looking and talking about this like it's an okay thing to do, going to be okay with a Democratic governor of the state of Tennessee selecting all the appointees that are making these actual rules up on the other side? Could you imagine? Could you, like if again, I'm just for conversation's sake, Gloria Johnson somehow pulls off the upset.
So here's the thing. I don't think anybody is okay with one person having that much leeway, that much latitude. And people don't, I mean, it was a long time before I realized, it was that library bill, before I realized how much power the Commissioner of Ed had.
When given it by lazy legislators. Because that's the thing to me, is this lazy legislation. It's, I don't want to make the decision. I don't want to be on the hook for the decision. I can pass it off over here.
Yeah. Anytime it says the rules are going to be promulgated by the Department of Ed.
Right. Lazy. Don't be lazy, people. Yeah. But right, I agree with you, but I'm going to say, but my point being is that, you know, again, we're looking out in the future what's eventually going to happen as this thing starts taking effect. And I think this is a standard. This is a standard in politics. Nobody looks at the idea of what happens when the other team gets in power.
Right.
And this authority we've given to this office is now on the other team.
Right. And the same thing happens with local school board policies. When local school boards give their authority over to the superintendent, yeah, you like this guy today.
Right.
But
you might not hire the next one.
Gonna be?
Right.
Yeah.
You might not be on the board anymore when we're hiring another one. And the political winds may have changed, and a different body is going to be one making that decision next time.
Right.
And right. I mean, that's a universal in politics to me that I don't understand why everybody doesn't freak out about that all the time.
Yeah. There was
I want Trump to be able to do this. Well, yeah, you might want Trump to do it, but you sure as shit don't want Biden to be able to do it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but you know, Republicans are going to win forever. No, you're not. It's never been true, ever. And
people have said, like, well, the board chair should get to do this and this and this. I'm like, well, what if I were the board chair? And they're like, oh, no.
That'd be different, yeah.
No, we don't want that at all.
That's why I've thrown Metro out a bajillion times, and that's always the answer I get from people in Metro. It's like, well, if Mayor Jacobs is the mayor of Knox County and under a Metro system, then yeah, that'd be great, but that's Kid Cannon, no way. And then all the Democrats I talked to, well, if Cannon was the mayor of Knox County, I'd be great with it, but not if it's. But then you don't care about the actual function of what we're talking about here. You just care who gets to push the buttons.
Right.
And again, over time, it's always going to flip over. It always is. I guess that this is where we shifted to the future portion of the conversation, because we've already been touching on it all the time. Because the funding thing has always been the argument against. It's like, how are we going to fund this? Now, on paper, it says this is going to get funded completely separately. As far as Knox County Schools is concerned, they will never get less money from the state than they're getting right now.
As long as it's allocated. So, as long as the governor and the legislature are still allocating the funds.
But they're obliged to at least hit in separate law. They're obliged to at least fund it the same amount as they were minimum of last year, right?
Well, could they change
can't go
it in
down.
kind of like the budgetary approval period?
County government is obligated to the same amount of funding
in real dollars,
unless enrollment drops.
Oh, I didn't know that part. Okay, that's a big difference.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, so according to this, they couldn't drop it, but the county could drop their portion,
like
according
right now,
to students.
Which for the county's sake and their financial situation would be awesome.
Like if the county's given $10 per student, they can't next year decide just to give $8 per student.
Right.
They can't give less
Per student.
But if the enrollment drops, then the overall amount they're giving
right. But the state's portion doesn't. But like Sam was saying, but
it can.
Well, on paper, at least right now, it can. Again, I don't disagree with you that over time it's going to change. It's never been my point in what I'm saying. But at least on paper, whatever total dollars Knox County Schools got this year, they will get at least that much in perpetuity from the state, as things stand right now.
I'm not sure it says that.
I mean, they didn't use perpetuity. That's my big word of the night.
So if it said in perpetuity, sure, let's take a look at it. But it doesn't say that.
But I mean, the hold harmless is that. I mean, that's the hold harmless is that we're not going to take funds away because you have less students.
Well, let's find that section.
Okay. Payment, denial of scholarship, promulgation of rules. Yeah, that's the part we already talked about a bunch.
So it does say you can't take two different scholarships from two different programs. So if you're already in the Nashville program, you can't take this one too. So here's an issue. In the state of Tennessee, it has always been considered constitutionally appropriate to educate all children, regardless of residency, regardless of lawful presence in the United States, is what the language they're using here. A student who is not documented.
Right. This Knox County Schools has to take.
Right.
Right.
So they are not eligible for a scholarship.
Well, that's a whole different ball of worms right now, which is a fun ball of worms, ball of wax, a can of worms. I know my phrases. But yes. Okay. I get what you, okay.
So there are some groups who want to challenge that. And there are some legislators who will not vote for the bill unless this language is in it.
Okay.
So some of the legislators who
Right.
were opposed to the bill last year were opposed to it because it could go to any student.
Right. Okay. Well, okay. Yeah, I get it. Okay. That's gross, but I get it, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay. My brain's working slowly.
So the allocation part looks like it's under promulgation of rules. Oh, no, that's Section 3. It appears to be under there, but that just needs to be
Section
bold.
4, subject of appropriation, the department head shall award a one-time bonus for the teachers. Pay off, suckers.
The rest of it is under...
Back under Section 3 is where the
under
money
promulgation
starts.
of rules, yeah.
Under promulgation.
If an LEA's TISA allocation for the current school year
Yeah, under I guess.
is less than experienced, and if the LEA experienced disenrollment, then the department shall allocate additional funds such that the LEA's TISA allocation for the current school year combined with the amount of any additional funds received pursuant to the subsection is equal to the TISA allocation for the immediately preceding school year.
Okay. Whatever they're getting this year, they're going to get a minimum of next year.
Yes, that is
In the hold harmless.
beginning with 25-26,
So that'd be next year's enrollment.
and then 26-27 if the district has ever received additional funds under this section and their allocation for the current school year is less than the sum total of the allocation for the immediately preceding school year and the amount of any additional funds for the immediately preceding. Oh, wow. And if they have disenrollment, then they shall allocate additional funds. So, looks like that also occurs in 26-27. And it does not say anything after 26-27. So, the hold harmless by this is only
Good.
25,
3
20.
years.
I only see 2, 25-26 and 26-27.
The first year, right, the 25-26 not counting, 26-27, or 25-26, 26-27, yeah.
Yeah. So after that, looks like, unless we find something else here, it looks like you're screwed after that.
Okay. Okay.
Any additional
So-
funds must be solely state funded, so that's where you're getting counties to agree to it. The department shall only award additional funds. Shall not. So it's making sure they can't award funds twice. Oh, and here's a little tricky piece. This is the same as it is in the one that's for regular session. They are not counting virtual students. So if you have 100 kids in a virtual school and half
Virtual public.
virtual public school.
Okay.
If you have 100 kids in a virtual public school, half of those students take a voucher so that, you still have building costs because you still have teachers in the building who are doing those
Do we have
lessons.
a standalone building for virtual teachers?
We do. It's not a standalone building. It's in with another school. But they have classroom space. So they have classroom space. They have administrators. And so those those costs wouldn't
They
change.
have administrators above the school that they're in? They're physically in? That's a different set of administrators for the virtual school than there is for the physical school that they're
Yes.
working in? Okay.
Yeah.
Would the space that they have be able to be used for physical students otherwise? Assuming enrollment?
That would assume enrollment, but you still have the cost of the virtual school.
Okay, so one argument that it has zero value to me in any of this conversation is that any reduction in the number of kids in the physical buildings is a problem. Because do we have a single school in Knox County that is not over capacity?
Yes.
There's at least one. There's got to be at least one.
Gap Creek.
Where's Gap Creek?
It's in South Knoxville.
Because, well, that's not going to last.
Yeah.
There's like next 5 years there's going to be like 2,000 more housing units in that neighborhood.
But so if it's not...
So short term, yes. Long term, no.
Right. So these virtual students, whatever they do, they are not going to be counted in that hold harmless.
I mean, because theoretically, that's the one that makes the most sense of, well, and we'll see what the Department of Ed or
as far as
Board of Ed.
buildings, that does not make a big difference. But you still have the staff. You still have, administrative costs there.
So back to our private school that we're going to start. If we start a virtual private school, are we voucher eligible?
As long as it's public?
It's a virtual private school.
It depends on whether it falls into one of those three categories.
Because isn't there like a Florida school that a bunch of people like really dug on and like especially
There's one in
pandemic
Tennessee
stuff?
too. Yeah, K-12.
Yeah. Well, that's. I mean, I wouldn't see why they wouldn't be voucher eligible.
Yeah.
That could be one where you have you might get under, maybe. Do they have to have 35 square feet per kid in a bathroom
No.
for everybody?
For staff.
In the virtual space, of course.
Virtual bathroom. Good answer, Sam.
No, it's virtual classrooms. I don't even go into the bathrooms.
I'm just trying to figure out how I'm being my evil capitalist here, trying to figure out how to make money off the state. That's all I want to do. How do I make money off of this mess?
We put them all in little Sim City classrooms.
Yeah. You got 37 bathrooms, kid. I don't know what you're talking about. I peed on the floor, so why don't you use the bathroom provided?
There's four corners in every room.
We'll build our classrooms in Roblox. I don't know. Let's summarize what's going on here. On paper, just on paper.
On paper, they're held harmless for 2 years.
Okay.
That third year, they're screwed. The county is screwed because the county...
Yeah, no, 3 years from now, Knox County's screwed anyway. Who cares? Not schools. Knox County at large. Not just Knox County schools.
I thought it had a weird little subsection about being like ADA compliant.
Larson's going to come in here and double taxes on us. What should happen? Anyway.
That it was basically, it wasn't going to force, I guess, like any school to take a student with disabilities.
Right.
But it also
that's
said
always a
that,
private school
we
thing.
were still going to abide by any ADA.
Now,
'Cause I didn't really say what
Again,
they were trying to
we're
like,
going
carve
to
themselves out of.
We're going to abide by all these regulations if the private school is abiding by these regulations, basically.
but TISA rules, like if ADA standards, it's a bigger voucher check because the voucher check is not 7 flat. It's 7 is the standard. Students with disabilities, students from disadvantaged neighborhoods by XY. There's a whole 7,000 is the minimum of a voucher.
Right, but it costs exponentially more.
I'm
than
not saying
that.
that's not true. I'm just saying. But at least
on paper, yeah,
you're not going to go. Okay, well, the fair argument is if you're refusing a special needs student, it's not just $7,000 you're refusing. You're refusing a larger sum than that. Whatever the specific comes out of the formula.
It would cost them more, though.
Sure, it would. Absolutely, it would.
So yeah, they are refusing more, but it would also cost them more. And if they're not already ADA compliant, if they don't already have staff that can deal with whatever the disability may be.
So is there a separate set of ADA rules for schools? Because the city of Knoxville made my bar non-ADA compliant. Made me go non-ADA compliant.
I think it'd be pretty kind of standard across the board for like a building itself.
But again, that's the kind of question I'm asking. Like building wise, ADA compliance in a building is that's ubiquitous. There's no building. There are not many buildings. Mine being an exception because it was built in 18 whatever.
So for schools, the compliance has to do with new buildings or how long a building has been in existence.
But we're talking ADA compliance is literally just physical stuff. Are there ramps? Are there handles? Are there the lift bars in the bathroom? That kind of stuff. That's all the ADA compliance. As far as for the Department of Ed's part of it, because I don't think you can get a building built anymore without ADA compliance.
I don't know.
For any sort of public use, even if it's not a public building.
But it wouldn't be public use if it's a private school.
But it's still for public use. It's public access. My building that my business is in is a private building, but I'm obliged to have ADA access to it because it's open to the public.
But a private school is not open to the public.
Oh, that's an interesting... It is. I don't know if it is or isn't, technically speaking.
I know a fire marshal. I think I could ask.
Because just off the top, I don't think there's a church that I've ever been to in my life that isn't ADA compliant.
Oh, I have. But they're older.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say there's probably a grandfather clause.
Age withstanding. There's a little church up at my grandma's house that had the most wonky ass elevator that was only 3 feet because they had stairs, but they didn't have the room to build a ramp, and so they built this little elevator thing on the side of it.
I've seen those. Yeah,
it was sketchy, real sketchy.
Yeah.
But it may or may not have been ADA compliant, but it was compliant so that people in the wheelchair who wanted to go to the church could participate in service. But that was because they wanted to do so, maybe not because they were obliged to. But again, this is West Virginia, which is a whole different set of rules than we have here. I don't know that you could build a building that isn't a residence in the state of Tennessee that isn't ADA compliant. I don't know if that's true or not.
And I'd say it's probably like with most things that if you go in and try to do any kind of renovation, that then you've got to then get everything back up to current code.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. A private school would still fall under those building guidelines, zoning guidelines, all that kind of stuff. So ADA compliance is kind of irrelevant, I think. I feel like. I could be wrong.
I think it talks about it had to do, I was just rereading, it has to do with acceptance of students. That basically, I guess you can't force a private school to, I forget what they call it, an individualized education plan.
Now that makes sense, functionally.
Yeah.
So here's a trick in there that's not really spelled out. So if a student has an IEP now, a special education student has an individual plan, when they accept this voucher, they sign that plan away. So if they return to their public school doesn't have to start over where they left off. They may have to go back to square one and build that plan all over again. Basically, they sign away their right to that plan.
Well, because they're leaving. That makes sense.
In any other situation, if they left, that plan would follow them. There are...
So, if I move...
And this really depends on the district, too, because some districts would just say, let's just pick it up and continue.
Our special ed set's going to reassess this anyway for our people.
Right. But then others would be like, let's see. Because...
I mean, it would seem to me that it would make sense that the people who have to work to it want to be the one that have the plan set that they set, not the one that somebody else set. If I were the special ed teacher in Claiborne County and some Knox County kid comes over and they bring the plan with them, I'm like, okay, I see the plan. I may even know the person that set this plan, but this student's going under me. I'm doing my plan.
So the plan is set by a team of the parents and the administrators and everybody, and it grows from year to year. Well, but your audience hasn't necessarily. Okay. So it grows from year to year. So you would want to start from where that plan was and assess from there.
Right.
Rather than going, poof. And starting
from... Knox County School is going to shred the paperwork so none of that exists anymore? So if
I'm going to say that it's my understanding that Knox County Schools does not believe they would. However, I know there are some districts who absolutely would.
But like on the hypothetical, so my youngest had did some speech therapy stuff, so he had an IEP for it.
Yeah.
Had we moved to Florida and then ended up moving back because whatever, blah blah blah, and skipped 2 years. So he leaves the school system. His IEP plan's going to be on file somewhere.
Yeah.
And we come back and they're like, "Oh, hey, did you use some of this stuff down here? Here's your plan. Here's the plan where you left it. Did you do any more down there? I'll bring the paperwork with it from the school there or whatever." And I would assume that group would get together and they would take the plan that they had beforehand, and then the plan that the other school did, sit down and break down and combine and add and subtract, and basically have a new plan, but it's some conglomeration of the other two. That would be my assumption.
You would think they would take it into consideration, but like she's saying, it's not a guarantee.
But the inverse is what's the other scenario would be? It's okay. We just start over with a brand new plan without the history of the old plan in front of us.
Or they could start with no plan. They could say, okay, we have this new student. We're not sure they need services. Let's let them function in a regular classroom and see how it goes.
But I mean, again, part of
Which
that
is
part
a
of
really
that,
bad response.
But part of
there
that
are
planning
districts that
team
would
is
do
the
that.
parents, and the parents would be the ones.
There wouldn't be a planning team because there's no IEP when you return.
But as a parent of a new Knox County school kid, can I not bring that to attention? It doesn't oblige the schools to do something, but at least
You can bring it to their attention, but it doesn't oblige them to do anything. That's the thing, because you've lost those rights. Yeah.
all right, okay. So that's one for not taking your kid to a private school.
Yeah. I mean, it's really...
That's not going to take your kid anyway because he's expensive.
Yeah.
Or she. I'm not trying to gender that one.
Were they?
And they don't have to, I mean,
They doesn't
don't have to
exist. Not
follow
by the federal
anything.
government anymore. I mean, okay.
So there are some services, and it's really unclearly defined, but there are services that public schools assist private schools with. There's some, like, part of the funding that comes into public schools is that they assist with assessing students in private schools if they have special ed programs and things like that. But it very clearly says in here that the public school, none of that IEP service would be there. So,
I think
Right.
the
So
requirement
the
of
private
it
schools
would-
continue to do what we assume they're going to do and not take any special needs kids.
yeah.
I thought I read it's like the private school, I guess, could.
They
but
could.
There wouldn't be the requirement of,
Which means they won't.
right? Presumably, right?
And so then all of Knox County schools kids will be all the special need kids that are in Knox County, and then all the non-special need kids will be in private school. That's the long-term game here,
Possibly.
theoretically. Whoo!
And then you get politicians out there who say things like, well, why can't we just put students with special needs all in one school?
They're almost already there. Like half the public
So,
school kids are special needs.
That's what they start pushing for as a money-saving kind of idea. Like busing all the kids who need certain services to different schools so that all of, whoever needs this service goes to this school, whoever needs this service, and then basically
Segregation.
the
Long-term.
word I'm thinking of is institutionalizing.
Okay. At least, okay.
I mean, that's a very that's a very long-term thing, but
Right. I have mixed feelings on this one though. Like I really do. Like I've had history of having. How do I word this? Oh, there's no way to delicately do it. It's like we've had special needs in the classroom that was a constant distraction to the classroom, and my students were complaining to me about their inability to do their work because they had constant issues in their classroom. And it's like, I don't know how to answer that question to him. It's like, yeah, look, man, he's a human being, and he's actually really cool. He ended up being he's a really interesting. Anyway, doesn't matter. I don't. There's part of it, like as the purest parent part of me, it's like, why do I have to spend time and energy working with my student because they have a significant, consistent distraction in their classroom. And we could say that this is the distraction or other things the distraction, whichever one it is. It could be the building that's falling apart and the window's broken and all the kids can't pay attention because it's across the street from the train tracks or whatever it is. There's 1,000 different versions of it. But specifically being it's like, well, we're spending all this time and energy and effort on this thing that's costing us money, and it's a deterrent for my student.
Did it change over time? Did the distraction lessen over time?
Well, just because of the rotation of classrooms, whether or not they were in the classroom with him or not. That particular student is actually this kid's like this kid's one of those, you give him two numbers and he can multiply, divide, subtract, add, do all sorts of fun math stuff with it in a tenth of a second. And on the social aspect of it, I think it's been a great thing for my kids to engage with. And so like I said, like I started with, I have complicated feelings about this as a parent in it. And that's why part of me is trying to spread it out to other issues. A, to not sound like as much of an asshole as I know I sound like right now, but B, because I understand the complaint as a parent of, I just want my kid to know stuff. I want my kid to learn stuff. I want my kid to be capable of X, Y, and Z in the future. That is not helping this.
It could be, because they're learning and knowing about differences that they wouldn't know about if that student weren't there.
Right. Again, on the particular example, yes.
And so what I've seen,
I'm so sorry. I'm trying to backpedal this so hard right now.
No, it's fine. I'm gonna roll with it.
Okay.
So I've had a student who was very disruptive, yelled out, screamed out a lot, and when that student first started coming into the general education classroom, it was very disruptive for everybody. And some days he could stay for the whole class period. Some days he would just be there for a few minutes and the assistant would have to leave with him because it was so disruptive. So some of it depends on whether you have that additional staff, if you have funding for that staff that can make the determination of whether this student needs to be in this setting or a different setting today. Maybe tomorrow he comes back and he's fine. But over time, two things changed. That student's behavior changed as he learned from social cues. Everyone else's response to him changed. And it happened, it wasn't over like weeks or months. It was over a couple of years. The students were used to being in different classes with him and rotating through different classes with him. And when he had a meltdown or an outburst, he could stay a little longer because it didn't disrupt the whole class. They knew this was happening. They knew that it was fine. And once they understood what's happening is okay, they could just keep doing what they were doing. It's like this thing over here that you don't hear anymore almost. They knew that it was taken care of, that there was a teacher taking care of it, and that he was fine, and that it was just something that happened. And so it didn't disrupt them as much. And it was in a music class, so it was there. It's hard to
listen when you can't listen.
Still playing your instrument part, still doing whatever. And I remember one particular day, we had not had a problem in a very long time, and the assistant stepped out of the room to talk to somebody, and there was an issue, and I just went over, and we worked together for a minute, and he was calm and fine, and the assistant was so apologetic when she came back, and I said, no, it's fine. Everybody knew what to do. Everything's fine. So, previously I wouldn't have known what to do either. But from being in the classroom with her, I knew what to do. Students all knew what to do. And he calmed right down and just continued participating. So I think the easy answer is, just don't have students in the classroom like that. But when you have the staff available who has the knowledge and who can work with students for when they can be in a situation and when to take them out. It's kind of like, when do you take your screaming kid out of the grocery store?
I just walk away. I leave them there.
You just
Rest of go strike, deal with them.
It's those decisions.
No, I get it. Again, it's like it's a like I fully like I can't figure out how to like it's inarticulable on the conflict of it, because I do get that. Like I get the value of that, because like I've had jobs where people that I work with suck, and you got to figure out how to deal with people that suck. Right. I'm sorry. I apologize. I did not mean to imply that people with special needs suck. I'm just saying that the situation sucks. Maybe that's a better way to put it. Where you have a situation that sucks, and you got to figure out how to work in it. That's just the way jobs are. That's the way other things are in life.
And it's easier to say, I'm not going to do it, than to...
Right, to figure out... Yeah. And if you don't ever have to deal with it prior, it's harder to deal with it in the future. I do get that part of it.
I mean, I've been in classrooms where, just like a quote-unquote problem student was just about as disruptive as a special needs student could be. I just constantly wanted to...
their special needs
talk back, be disruptive. No, I'm talking about, just kids being just shitty.
Right.
We were talking about being disruptive.
They need a good hug from somebody that cares about them, and that's what their problem is anyway.
Maybe. Some just want to cause a stir. They like the attention.
Right. Yeah. Right. Every kid goes through that phase is until they figure out the attention they actually want.
Right.
They want attention, and then they figure out the different ways to get it, and then they figure out which attention they actually want. And some kids don't figure out; they just don't care. It's just any attention is good attention.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right, so let's let's surmise our voucher bill. So they're.
So we were down to the point of the teachers getting the $2,000 bribe. Take
the bribe, people. Well, wait, you got to accept the other side.
So it's only if you were a teacher employed in a K through 12 public school in this state for the 24-25 school year. So depending on promulgation of rules, does that mean you were employed the whole year?
Right.
What if you were hired October 1st?
Right.
What if you were hired?
Filling in from someone that
you're
was
new.
Who
cares about? Nobody cares about new teachers.
Also, it's subject to appropriation. So this whole bill could pass, and then this part not be appropriated in the budget.
Oh shit! Did we forget to appropriate enough money for this?
Then you should. Then
oh yeah, we don't have this money. Sorry.
Sign off on it, teachers, and then strike when you don't get it. Just walk out. Wait, I'm not pro-union. Anyway.
They lose their license if they do that, so it'd be really bad.
Of course they do. Who gives them their license?
The Commissioner of Education.
Oh, see, don't get... I hate... Anyway.
There's so much power there. It's insane.
What about tenured teachers? Does that save them from anything?
Only thing tenure is due process.
No.
So if you walk out, which is not legal, then you could lose your license, and the state decides that. So there's nothing I've always told teachers, I'm like, if you choose to do this, you need to understand that as a school board, as administration, nobody in Knox County can help you.
I'm not a big fan of. I'm not a big union guy. I've never been a big union fan. But the idea of it's illegal to do what a union does just seems crazy.
Yeah.
Like, you could form a union, but you can't do anything.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
That was one of those.
The teacher union's the most, I don't mean this offensively, but it's probably one of the most police officer union is another one that makes zero sense. Yeah, you can form a union, but you can't do anything. You walk out, you're screwed. Yeah. You're not I get the argument from the other side. It's like, well, we can't have a cop strike. If the cops strike, we have no cops, and that's a big problem. Well, sure. Then don't put them in a position where they want to strike. That's the whole point of the union. Same thing with the teachers. Yeah. We can't have teachers strike. Why? Because we don't have our babysitters for the day. Well, then don't put them in a position where they want to strike. Now, at the other side, of course, is the union can get all full of itself and strike for everything all the time if they wanted to. But that's
it's power struggle.
It's a chicken or the egg. But yeah. Anyway, that just cracks me up, the idea of it's illegal to do what a union does, but you can have a union.
Yeah, I think all of that was the legislation in 2011 that Harry Brooks and Bill Dunn did.
Yeah, jackasses.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's pre my paying attention time.
It was my first. That was
all right. So
my first time in legislature.
So I want to surmise, and then I have to talk about Mississippi for just a second because we took the whole 2 hours on this, and I love it.
Has it been 2 hours?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
So on paper, at least for 2 years, Knox County schools will get at least a minimum of what they're getting from the state of Tennessee for education.
I don't think we can say at least 2 years because there's only 2 years in here. I think it's 2 years period.
Okay.
It could still be at least 2 years.
Okay. Well, I bring that. It doesn't make my statement untrue.
It could also be not more than.
Exactly.
I've been around enough politicians. I'm sorry. You're a
Clock's
politician
ticking.
too. Shut it.
Not anymore. I'm just unemployed now.
So, I think I think it's like herpes. You have it or you don't. It's always there.
Yeah, I was about, yeah.
It's always whether it's currently a problem, you're still a politician. But yeah, I don't know. I think I don't know how to surmise everything we just went over. There's so much. Long story short, Jennifer hates it. If you agree with Jennifer, call your Becky Masseys, your Elaine Davises, your Carringers, whoever, and tell them you will never vote for them again. And more than that, you will actively go out and find somebody else to replace them, because that's about the only play you have at this point.
So I'm like, hey, I may just voted for you, but come 4 years from now, I may not vote for you again. Remember that. It's
important that we talk just a sentence worth. The very last page of this thing, there is an allocation for building funds for public schools in distressed areas and areas with natural disasters.
Right, because that's a sale to a couple of specific people.
And this money only comes if this bill passes.
Name them. Who are they? Who are the distressed natural disaster? I mean, obviously,
it doesn't specify.
So it just says economically
right, but
distressed,
you know who they are,
or at-risk county, and it would be designated by the Department of Economic and Community Development.
Oh, that's another appointed body that has more power than they should.
Yeah, so we'll have to look those up. I'll look those up and figure
I'll be
that
curious,
out.
because you'll know, because you can figure it out. That's specifically aimed at a handful of people.
And it could be future to the occurrence of any emergency or natural disaster. So
right. This is the one thing that ties into the other one on emergency funds for Milton or Helene
and
or
this
whatever.
is specifically for building schools.
Right.
So that's the part that does specifically tie in there. And there were 5, and I can't be specific at all, but there were 5 mayors in Upper East Tennessee around the hurricane area. These 5 mayors signed on to a letter supporting this voucher plan, and their boards of education and funding bodies and everybody went nuts because they didn't understand.
Right. I'm trying to get you the money you guys want. Shut up.
So now they're trying to roll it back.
Right.
And
what we sign on to?
What's the dude that pants the people? Your favorite?
Jeremy Faison.
Yeah, he's up there, right?
Yeah, he's in Cott County.
Yeah. He's up there. He's got some. But he was probably on board with this in the first place anyway. He didn't need to be sold on it.
No,
but he'll take a payoff anyway. I wouldn't say he would say no to the payoff either.
And his
I
child's
don't know.
in a private school.
I think if you want less kids to be in your kids' school, so you have more room for your kids to wander around and stuff, call your legislator, tell them to get this thing passed so we can get more kids out of public schools and into private schools and get them out of your way.
And then just wait for new schools to be built.
No, because you have more room in your school. You don't need a new school built. That's the thing.
How do you have more room if there's nowhere
because
for
the kids? Because all these other kids are going to private schools. Get like 30%.
Where's the room at the private schools?
I don't care. That's their problem.
You have more room, but you don't have as many teachers because you've
whatever.
lost all the money.
The teachers are the teachers are the unimportant part. It's the building that matters, right?
I don't think there's room there for it, but I don't know.
I don't know. Okay, so if nothing else, I think we got deeper and further than I think you're going to get anywhere else, unless you're already deep and far into this thing.
Come to the conclusion that we're still confused.
I'm not confused. I know exactly where we are on this.
Well,
I can't believe it's been 2 hours, but it says it right there.
Yeah, yeah. Time flies when you're getting into the weeds of some ridiculousness of stuff. I mean, long story short here is that there is one person that matters more than any other person if you care about anything that's going on in public schools. And I don't know their name, and I don't know when Lee appointed them, and I don't know if Blackburn's going to keep them or not. That person controls every single aspect of everything that matters in this conversation right now if this thing is to pass. So if you're a private school parent and you like your private school, this one person now has a bunch of control over your private school.
Can we do one last little thing on education?
Sure.
I think you tried to ask Jennifer about the Federal Department of Education.
Oh, yeah. That was the
Can
one.
you do like a quick synopsis of kind of what
do they do?
Any idea?
I would have to dig into that a little bit.
Never mind.
Because I always get anyway. So, okay, fine.
They don't. It's
All right, stay tuned. Future episode with Jennifer, we'll talk about Federal Department of Education.
It's a lot of additional funding on top of this.
Right, okay. But it's all grant stuff. It's like specific. Anyway, doesn't matter.
Generally.
All right, so we're going to Mississippi for just a second because it's the funniest, greatest story of the week. In the state of Mississippi, a state senator from the state of Mississippi has introduced a bill making it illegal to ejaculate without getting pregnant. And I love it. It's great. It's a perfect troll bill making fun of abortion laws and stuff like that in play. Let me pull it up real quick so I can quote correctly.
There is a caveat for donation or if contraception is used.
Really? There's a caveat for donation? Well, donation.
I thought that's what it
I mean, it makes sense.
Right?
Okay. Hold on. Where is it? There it is. That's one. All right. NBC News reports.
Still lost opportunity.
No, it's just a delayed opportunity.
Well, I was thinking of the
All
contraception.
right. NBC News report: Mississippi lawmaker introduces contraception begins at Erection Act. Love it. That's what I want to do with my life. I want to be a bill namer.
But it's not Ejaculation Act.
All right, so the bill, which is unlikely to pass, would make it unlawful for a person to discharge genetic material without the intent to fertilize an embryo. You're right. I think a better name for that would be the contraception begins at ejaculation. That would be a more accurate title to the bill. Like bills are titled accurately. See Tennessee Education Scholarship Fund. The last 2 hours of what we've been talking about. Mississippi State Senator Bradford Blackman, a Democrat, introduced a bill. Okay, just to be clear, this is a Democrat in Mississippi. I'm sure there are less of them in Mississippi than there are here in Tennessee, and it's already a tiny number here. Introduced a bill this week that would seemingly ban men from masturbating or engaging in other sexual acts in which they have no, quote, intent to fertilize an embryo. The bill, titled The Contraception Begins at Erection Act, would make it unlawful for a person to discharge genetic material without the intent to fertilize an embryo. It includes exceptions for sperm donation and using contraception to prevent fertilization. That's an interesting. The contraception one. That's an interesting one. That's kind of counterintuitive to the punchline.
Yeah.
Goes to intent.
But it depends on the contraception. Like if it's birth control, like it's true birth control, because like the point to me here is like it's making fun of like. We took all the like men making decisions on women body stuff and flipped it over of, well, we're going to make some decisions on men body stuff, right? And so if the contraception is the woman using contraception, like a birth control pill or something like that, then it's furthering the punchline of the woman can decide whatever she wants. The man has no decision in the process. Yeah. Now, if it's a condom or something that the man is actually using, it makes less sense in the punchline, but it's not clear in that statement. Anyway, $1,000 fine for a first offense, $5,000 for a second, and $10,000 for any subsequent offenses. Millions of dollars could be raised on this. I think it's a great plan. Let's get it done. Mississippi, you need the money. Pass it. Anyway, thoughts? Anybody else? I couldn't let this go through news cycle and wait another week. There's no way I could wait another week to talk about jacking off in Mississippi is a crime. What else do you do all day in Mississippi? Come on.
I applaud the effort. But I wonder if it just kind of like lessens the actual like true pushback. They're like, okay, if you're just going to be a like joke about this,
I think Gloria could introduce that here. It's the same punchline. The punchline is this is how dumb you guys sound, but the idiots around you agree with you. I
get that, but to go forth and introduce actual legislation in a state house is my only point. Like I said, I applaud the idea of trying to point out the idiocy. But
I think that's what makes it. That's what makes the punchline is that you went that far with it. If you just said it at a public thing, I should introduce a bill that does this. Ha ha ha.
I mean, we talk about legislators wasting time.
Yeah, but you're a Democrat in Mississippi. You're a waste of time anyway. Like a Democrat in the state of Tennessee House, you're a waste of time. Like you literally do nothing. You can't do anything. So you might as well waste time with intent.
So they should make joke legislation versus actually try to make true legislation?
Waste time with intent, sure. If you're a waste of time for existing because of the way the House works, then use your wasted time for the public BS of it.
I disagree. I mean, we've talked about, you get like what? I don't know if we figured out that there was a limit as to how many bills, that there is a limit to how many bills you as a legislator can
20
introduce.
Per House.
I think they set the rules each year.
True, but it's generally been the last couple of years at least. It's been about 20 per House
you
member.
have a limit per legislation that you yourself can introduce.
Yeah.
Okay,
and you're gonna do this.
again.
So if you're in a dysfunctional legislature where one party will not let the other party pass anything, or they won't let a particular legislator pass anything,
Again, Gloria.
then even if they bring a real bill, they're not going to be able to pass it.
All right, but I think that's something you could at least, kind of take back to your constituents and
Yeah.
try to lay out. It's going to be a hard argument to put out because nobody's going to read that full bill that failed that you tried to introduce. But you've at least got facts on your side that you tried to introduce this, good bill, and then it constantly keeps getting knocked down. Versus, I tried to introduce this conception at erection,
but your
but
whole,
nobody voted for
but
it.
your whole premise is based off of the press conference after the fact. And so the press conference after the fact is, I tried to introduce this important bill, and they wouldn't let me do it. I introduced this ridiculous bill because they weren't going to let me do it anyway. Which one's going to get more attention to the point? Because we're talking about a Mississippi State House bill right now in Tennessee.
It depends on what your aim of the point is. I mean, if his aim was to pass some sort of legislation on reproductive rights, maybe.
Well, it goes.
You're getting that conversation started, but
right? But it goes back to be the most wonderfully, perfectly political thing that I've maybe experienced locally in my life was when they moved Gloria around, and then we have this new District 90. Mm-hmm. This new District 90 that they drew that Gloria had to move to stay into basically her own district, right. And they ran that. I don't even remember his name anymore. Against her in that district, and the whole platform that guy was running on was how ineffectual Gloria Johnson is.
Right.
That was his platform. Vote for me because I can actually get something done. Well, nobody's voting for Gloria because they think she's going to get anything done. Nobody does. Everybody that votes for Gloria is voting for Gloria because she is exactly what she is. She's big. She's loud. She has a point. She has values at some level in what she does. Right. And those values are closer to my values, quote unquote, of somebody that voted for her. It's not that they expect her to get anything done. And nobody's going to be upset with her when she comes back and says, I introduced this bill and they didn't get through. I tried something really good and they wouldn't let me do it. Maybe every once in a while she'll get lucky and it'll be one that's really good and some Republican out in West Tennessee will steal it, rewrite it, and put their own name on it and get it passed, which has happened.
Right.
But at the same time, for her sake and for her actual political and actual societal ends, what she's actually trying to do, something ridiculous and dumb, like getting kicked out of a session, is way more valuable than failing 100 bills a year.
I mean, I don't think that helped progress any kind of bills. I don't think just because she got kicked out and made the news increased the chances that she was still going to be able to pass any kind of legislation. I guess I kind of think of it. I need
to get a hold of Jack Vaughn and see what some of the because he's the data dork. I need to get a hold of him and see what some of the trending stuff has changed over the years. I'll bet you that outside of her own district, there has been more push incrementally, very incrementally, towards the left than there has been in years past because of what's been happening in the last couple of years, specifically about the Tennessee 3 stuff.
Maybe.
Than anything she's done legitimately, quote unquote, as a bill or anything like that.
I think I hear what you're saying. It didn't help her get legislation passed.
Right.
But it helps her call out bad things that are happening.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can't see those from the outside. If somebody on the inside isn't telling you, and there are lots of legislators who go along to get along. And then you've got a couple of legislators who are there just to, be that watchdog.
Right. I'm weird. Amelia is my favorite city councilor. Not that I don't particularly care for any of her political stances on most anything. And the ones that I do agree with her on are for completely different reasons than she ever cites. But I like the fact that she will not let anything just go. Nothing just says, okay, fine, whatever. There is no, oh, fine, whatever with Amelia. Everything is going to have at least some questions if Amelia is involved in it. Now, it sucks because anything she tries to do gets killed because she's such a joy killed everybody else's plans. But that's healthy government to me.
All right. And kind of in that same line, I'm more apt to, re-vote for someone that's willing to sit there and keep knocking on the door versus just kind of give up and be like, okay, I need to vote for somebody else. So when they look through the peephole, they'll let that person in and get legislation passed.
There's different ways to knock on the door, I guess, is my point.
All right.
Like you can knock with your fist or you can knock with your foot.
Well, I mean, as far as it and proverbially trying to keep passing a particular legislation that means something to you.
All right, we've officially trapped Jennifer here for the whole time. Get weird for me. Come on, real quick. Get it out. That's how we keep people awake at the end.
Oh, let's see here. Stick with us. Why the Internet is obsessed with one of the simplest tools known to man. For those who have ever found a cool stick and felt the impulse to show it off, there's an Internet community of millions that wants to see it. Stick Nation is a worldwide movement that thrives on irreverent, fantastical, and downright wholesome descriptions of sticks and people who rank them.
I love
Let's
it.
see here.
That does tie back to some
There's
school stuff.
3 million followers on Instagram,
Weapons
TikTok,
policy.
and appropriately known as Stick Talk.
I love it. That was one of the weirdest things when my eldest, our first year at Knox County Schools, I was all adamant about reading all the stuff in the manual and the policy, like under the weapons guideline, a stick can be considered.
It can.
And it's like, well, how are you going to have a zero tolerance policy on a stick?
Depends on how the weapon's wielded.
Right.
It's
So it's not zero tolerance anymore because it's not about the weapon. It's about the way the weapon's being used. Like that jumped out at me immediately. And I was like, well, then make sure there's no sticks on the damn playground. Because I have boys. And what boys do is they pick up sticks and they wield them like swords. And I don't want to have to go to some hearing trying to explain how my kid's sword fighting with a stick is not him trying to kill somebody.
He was chasing another boy with a stick.
But it's zero tolerance, so it's too late. So there is no hearing to bother with it.
Like
More likely to get in trouble if they used it like a gun.
Yeah.
Right. That's the funniest thing in the NFL right now is like if you finger pistol your first down win, that's a penalty in football.
Well, it used to be if they did kind of like
Like
thumb over the
throw,
neck.
yeah. Anyway, yes, that's a fun policy stuff. All right, Jennifer, that was amazing. That was the most interesting way in the weeds thing I've done in a while. Thanks for coming.
I like the weeds.
Yeah, you do. I got a whole drawer full. Yes!
Great TV show.
See, Jennifer is so high right now. So high.
Oh,
Finally kicking in.
125 milligrams in 2 hours. That's big numbers.
yikes.
Snoop is jealous. Almost in agreement, everybody. Almost in agreement at gmail.com, on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube. Go to the website, almostinagreement.com. We can check out what's going on there. Holloroo 25 is in the books. May 17th. Come register your Soapbox Derby car. Vend your cool wares, or just come out and hang out. We got a sweet rock concert that's part of the day. And you can find more on that on holloroo.co. That's holloroo.co for Holloroo 2025. We are on all your favorite podcast providers. Like, friend, share, follow, tweet, text, retweet. I don't know. Whatever you can do to share. Spread the word. You've got like 2 days to make a decision and start bothering your elected officials on what to do about this voucher situation. We didn't touch on immigration or, disaster relief stuff, but disaster relief's an easy one. Yes, we all want that. Anyway, almost everybody, thanks for listening. Thank you so much for coming, Jennifer. It was a great time. No, Jennifer is not high right now. I was just kidding. Relax, everybody. She's unemployed, though. Like, it's Friday night. You ain't got shit to do. I'm going to get you high tonight. Yes! I just went full-on Friday reference. Anyway, thanks, everybody. Bye. What's his name? Chris what?
Huh?
From Friday? Chris what? I just blanked out on his name.
Chris.
It's not Dr. Dre or Tucker.